I was looking at my favorite app to find free stuff when I happened to see the one for this Honda mower. I then made contact with them and then drove over to their place and picked it up. But here's the problem. The ad only mentioned that it did not work, but when I talked to them, they said that it does run. But they did say there was a problem with the self-propel, and it would not roll backwards or even go forward. So hopefully we can fix it, otherwise I'll have to come up with another plan for this mower. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at this Honda lawnmower. And the problem is that it does run, but the self-propel doesn't work, and pushing this mower backwards or even forwards is almost impossible. Now I hate to admit it, but it seems like one of the biggest problems with these Honda mowers, at least besides the recoil, are the wheels, and when I explain more about it, it'll make more sense as to why the self-propel is related to the wheels. Now I'm going to try and repair this lawnmower, but yours might be different, so this might not work on yours. So if things are not working out for you, like in the video, please ask about it, and I'll be glad to answer your questions. Now the first thing I want to show you is just how bad the problem really is, and as you can see, the rear wheels will not rotate at all. Now it might be tough to gauge while pulling on the mower, so trying to turn them by hand makes it a little bit easier to see just how stuck they really are. So next up is going to be a test run of not only the engine, but also of the self-propel, but before we do that, we need to check on the oil and the fuel. And on first impressions, it would seem like whoever owned the mower before was taking care of it. But I only think the oil looks fresh because there might be an oil leak somewhere on the engine, and it's requiring new oil to be added to it all the time. So as you just witnessed, the wheels didn't want to move at all when engaging the self-propel, making this mower pretty much useless in my book, at least when it comes to trying to sell it. Now on the off chance that we need to put this mower upside down to take off the transmission, I want to drain all the fluids from it. Now the reasoning is pretty simple. It'll keep it from spilling oil or gasoline and making a huge mess. And besides that, it'll give us a chance to inspect the condition of the oil as well as look for any kind of metal shavings in it. Now luckily both the oil and gasoline look to be in great shape, which is great news. Next, I want to give this mower a very quick spray and rinse since it looks like it's never been done in its entire life. The main reason to do that is because looking at the amount of oily dirt on the engine, I do believe it might be leaking oil, and cleaning it is the first step in helping to figure it out. Now besides the recoil and wheel issues, Hondas will sometimes develop an oil leak near the front of the engine or by the governor shaft. So cleaning up what's built up over time will make it a lot easier to spot the leak. Also, cleaning it will give us the chance to inspect the condition of the mower and find out if there might be some problems with it. Now, this is something that I like to do when working on dirty machines, but you're welcome to not do this, especially if you're uncomfortable about it, which is understandable. But if there was one area that you do want to make sure was very clean, it would have to be the cooling fins on the engine. Now the cooling fins along with the engine oil are very important in keeping your engine cool, otherwise it might wear out faster than it should. So after spraying the mower down, it's a good idea to let it dry off in the sun, or if you're in a hurry, use compressed air or even a leaf blower to get rid of the water. Now do not, and I repeat, do not put the mower away back into the shed or garage until it's dried off, otherwise you're going to find out what terrible things water can do to a mower. Now, if your recoil is slow to retract the rope like this one is, you can just get by with spraying a thin lubricant into the spring area. However, if yours is a lot worse than this one is, then you might have to take it apart to clean the spring of any rust and dirt that might be on it. Also, when installing the nuts for the recoil, set your power tool to a low setting, or if you're doing it by hand, try not to put too much force behind it. Oh, there is one more nasty little issue with these Honda mowers, and that is for some reason the washers on the wheels are installed incorrectly. So when looking at the parts diagrams, the washer is supposed to be on the inside of the wheel and not the outside. I guess it's not a big deal, but I find that the wheels seem to work better if the washer is on the inside like it shows. So when I take the wheels off the mower to lubricate them, I'm also going to put the washers back on the inside too. I'm pretty sure most of you who are watching might realize why they're being installed the way that they are, so I'm not going to say it out loud. But after getting the wheel back onto the lawnmower, I think the results speak for themselves, and I'm going to keep doing this until I have a reason not to. So something really strange and fortunate happened while I was pulling the mower backwards to get it in a different position on the table. So something broke loose and is now allowing the rear wheels to start rotating again, which is a good but also a very bad thing. Now some of you might already know why these wheels get like this, but this one is a lot more complex than your typical situation. So after getting the wheel bolt out, I noticed that there was a lot of damage to the supporting structure on the backside of the wheel. This can only happen when the drive gear is able to move away from the mower and interfere with the back of the wheel. We then turn our attention to the drive gear and come to find out it's not rotating like it should be. So I do have to apologize to the tool people out there because my snap ring pliers were not cooperating with me and I was having a tough time using them. But after removing the snap ring along with the spacer, we're now able to carefully remove the drive gear, taking care not to lose the spring underneath it. So the first of many mistakes is that the drive gear is facing the wrong direction. With the gears facing the wrong way, the wheels will not be able to free spin separately from the transmission while pushing the mower forward. The next problem is that the key for the gear is also installed the wrong way, which pretty much locks the gear even if the gear was installed the right way. They ended up installing the key with the flat side down when it should be flat side up. This will allow it to follow the inner edge of the drive gear. There's also a spring in the notch for the key that applies force to keep the key against the gear. Next, I'm going to try and clean the notch the best I can to get it ready for reassembly. However, even with these two problems, this doesn't explain why the wheels weren't turning. Now don't worry, I'll try to make it more clear here in a bit. Next, I flipped the mower on its back to get a better look at it. But that's when I noticed that the drive shaft was not being supported, which can only mean one thing. So it turns out the bushing for the shaft had come out of the housing, and it also turns out that bushing was stuck to the shaft. And when the bushing came out of the housing, the wheels were able to turn again, but now we have two problems. First, we need to get the bushing free again, but as you can see, it's not budging at all, and using too much force could end up breaking it. That means we'll have to find a way to delicately persuade it to free itself from the shaft. So for this job, I'm going to use a liberal amount of brake cleaner to help free up the bond between the bushing and the shaft. Next, I'll try wedging the bushing to move it in either direction to help free it up and also allow the brake cleaner to work its way in between them. And once it starts moving, it'll begin to get easier to move it on the shaft until it's finally free. Then we'll need to put the bushing back into the housing, hopefully without having to take apart the entire drive line. And to help out, I'm going to take all the components off the end of the drive shaft. This will help me to see how far I've installed it. So after that, I'll start the process of using a wedge to drive the bushing back into place. However, there is a small problem. Now using this method works, but I will not be able to push it into the opening any further than flush with the opening. Now to push it beyond the opening, I'll have to get creative, but to be honest, if this works, I'd rather worry about that part later on. Right now, I want to get the bushing back into place, make sure the drive gear works like it should, and then test if the self-propel even works. So what you're seeing now is the other wheel, and every single problem except the drive gear orientation was present with this one too. So if you haven't figured it out, someone was trying to either service the drive system or fix the cause for the wheels not rolling backwards and made it 10 times worse. So I am going to be nice and not make any assumptions on how all the mistakes were made, but I would like to make a recommendation, which is to follow along with a how-to video to keep this from happening to you. The other option is to film the process of taking it apart, that way you can put it back on the way you found it, that is assuming someone didn't mess it up already. So it turns out they had lost one of the thicker spacers on this side. That's the reason why the shaft was able to move, causing the drive gear to make contact with the back of the wheel. Now because I was flipping back and forth from one side of the mower to the other, filming the repair can be a bit confusing. So I'm going to omit the footage of working on the other side from now on just to make it easier to understand what's going on. So what you've been seeing for the last minute is the installation process along with copious amounts of lithium grease, but you're welcome to use whatever lubricant you have on hand. And for those tool people out there, don't worry, after this mess with the snap ring pliers, I did order new tips for them and they've been working great ever since. Once the wheels have been installed, you can see they can now freewheel in the forward direction, and when turning backwards, they'll spin the transmission just like it's supposed to. Now you're going to know the wheels are freewheeling because you'll be able to hear the key making a clicking noise while the wheels are turning forward. Another reason for the wheels to be able to freewheel is because it allows the wheels to turn independently, making turning a lot easier. The last things we need to do is to put oil back into the engine along with some fuel, replace the air filter, and then start the mower and test out the self-propel. So here's a tip on these Honda engines. According to the manual, only press the dipstick against the fill tube to check the oil. And just make sure the oil is somewhere on the X'd out portion on the dipstick and do not overfill it. Also, be sure the mower is on level ground, otherwise you'll get a false reading which could harm the engine. So as you just saw, the self-propel is now working, which is fantastic news. All we have to do now is find a way to push the bushing another ½ inch into the assembly and then test it some more and it should be good. So what caused all these problems then? Well, it's still under debate, but either dirt is getting into the bushing or rust is forming on the shaft, causing it to get stuck to the bushing. Then someone tried to fix it, but then caused the freewheeling part to lock up and pretty much brick the mower, turning it into a permanent lawn ornament. So to keep this from happening to you, make sure you apply lube to the bushing area once a year and also lube the drive gear, but you don't have to take it off. Now it may not be as effective as lubricating it with it apart, but at least you won't risk messing it up. So here's how the wheels are related to the self-propel, at least in this case. When pushing the mower forward without the self-propel on, the wheels spin separately from the transmission and you can hear them making a clicking noise. But when pulling the mower backwards, the wheels will cause the transmission to rotate, but in the case of this one with the shaft stuck to the bushing, it wouldn't roll backwards and the self-propel wouldn't work either. So my question is, knowing about all these possible issues with these mowers, would you still want one? Oh, and if you don't want them, that just means more for me to pick up, fix, and then sell then.
Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or about your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.